Do you regard black magic as being purely fictitious, or is there some truth in it?
Some truth. 100% truth. There is nothing fictitious about black magic, in any way whatever. It is a fact. It is a fact which has existed for several thousand years. I mean, when we talk about black magic, we are talking about Satanism, necromancy, alchemy, witchcraft, the worship of Satan.
Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I have a very special video for you today. We are joined by Joseph Powell, who is an empath that was abducted and enrolled into CIA mind fracture programs when he was just a child. Now, he has been kind enough to come on and tell us about his experiences and the events that led up to him being inducted into these programs. Joseph will be back for a second part, as we did not manage to cover absolutely everything because he has so much to talk about, and I'm very grateful for that. So we will be back with a second installment at some point, but I hope you enjoy this part. Thank you.
Do a little bit of an introduction on yourself. I don't really want to butcher your story, to be honest, so I want that all to come from you. So if you'd like to do a little bit of an introduction on yourself before we get into the meat and bones of the SSP stuff, then please do feel free.
Okay, sure. Well, my name is Joseph William Powell. I live in America, and basically I have been taken into different programs as a child, and quite a few of them are public. I have quite a few people that remember me from these programs, well over 20 at least. Not all of them are public. So, and also on top of that, after I came out, like I did a round table where there was a CIA archivist named Doris Neely who verified that she did have my files and inputted them into some CIA systems. And
was this the same Doris whose house burnt down following that?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Cool.
So
that speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah, basically from my recollection at this point, it started around when it began that I remembered. I had some memories, and it started around the age of 8 when I was around in the 3rd grade. So that's pretty much what I recall. That's when they basically started the mind fracturing process and other stuff. So.
And has the majority of your experience been from the secret space program?
A majority of my experience was started on Earth, and then I had memories of basically being taken in craft when I was like around 12. And it wasn't really memories. It was like I remembered because it was happening in real time, and it never got erased from my memory. And I just didn't understand what it was at the time, up until the point of like two years ago or so, 2.5 years ago. I was always looking for answers, and I ended up stumbling into a bunch of different stuff, and I stumbled into some people that I recognized, and it was like Gaia TV when they brought on Jason Rice. That's when a lot of stuff started making sense.
Okay.
And I realized these weren't just dreams or just weird stuff that flashed, like this was real stuff that happened. After that, I started meeting with people that I remembered, and I just started having memory just flow out, especially after it became public.
Cool. Right. So if we're going to try and get some kind of chronological order to this, so from the interviews that I've watched of you, from my memory, you said the fracturing started about 8, right?
Yeah, it started around 8, 7 or 8, give or take. Yeah.
While you was in what we would call over here primary school. Yeah.
Yeah, I was basically in the Seventh-day Adventist Academy, and that was in California at the time.
Is that a public school or a private school?
It was a private school, if I recall.
Okay. Because I find a lot of these, a lot of the victims go to private schools. The SRA stuff is very rife in private schools, especially over here in the UK.
Yeah, it was in private schools and public schools, because I remember people showing up and bringing me out of class and, doing little weird tests and stuff.
Right. So this is what I was gonna ask you. You said that there was a female teacher that was asking you questions about the military, right? And she was sort of trying to not begin the process of indoctrination, but I suppose sort of see what you thought about the military at an early age to see if there was something there to build upon.
Yes, her name was I think it was Lisa Oster, if I'm not mistaken.
And was she a
It's been
teacher or a
while.
counselor?
She was a teacher. She was
Okay.
actually my teacher. And what had taken place is I was in the classroom. You know, we were all playing. All the kids were basically playing at the time. And my teacher had asked me to come over and sit down. And when I did, she started talking to me, and then she basically was like, so what do you think about the military? You know, and like I said in my other interviews, you know, basically I told her, you know, I love the military because I had family that were in the military, you know, and I was raised to respect them. And I was taught that, you know, they protected us and all that good stuff, you know. And you know, it went from there, and she basically started telling me that her brother was in the Navy.
Okay.
And I was like, I didn't know what the Navy was at the time. You know, I just understood military as universal, basically. And I was like, oh, well, what's the Navy? And, you know, she basically explained a little bit about what that her brother was in the Navy. And then like, I was like, I didn't understand what the Navy is. She didn't really go into too much about it. And then she skipped over and said that her father was in the CIA. And I
Right.
was like, well, what's the CIA? You know? And
You're a
she was,
child.
yeah, I was like, I had no clue what that was. And she basically said to me that they do morally ambiguous stuff, but it's for the greater good. And in the process of her talking about her brother, one of the kids interjected, you know, and sat down, and he said he overheard about, you know, what do you think about the military? You know, what do you think about the military? And he said that he liked the military too. So she got really perturbed, I would say, from just the memory that I have of it, you know, because this was just real time memory. Like that wasn't erased; it was always there. And you know, he sat down and he started interjecting a little bit. And she basically got flustered, but she just kept going. You know, and then she talked about her dad, and then, you know, she basically, I asked, well, what does the CIA do? And she specifically, like, you know, what do they do specifically? And she basically told me that was classified and she couldn't talk about it. And I was like, okay, you know.
Yeah. Dangle it in front of your face, I suppose, and make you want to know more.
Yeah. And then right before the conversation ended, she said, well, maybe I'll be able to introduce you to my brother. And I was like, oh, that would be cool, you know. And about a week or two went by. You know, I'm still not sure if it was a week or two because it's so long ago, you know, but about a week or two went by, and then they started bringing all these kids into this area where, you know, once a year we'd have like canned food drive, you know, so they stored the canned food in like plastic barrels that were in this one room, and it wasn't big, but it was big enough to hold, you know, like a table across one side of the wall and a table across the other side of the wall, the fold out ones. And they had computers set up, you know, and this was, you know, I was born in 1988. So this was like, I think 1997-ish, give or take. So, you know, having computers was a pretty big thing.
Yeah.
The only people that I've ever met that had them was my dad, you know, and he used it for business, and they weren't cheap. So I knew that they weren't cheap, you know, and they had them all lined up. They had a whole bunch of them. They started bringing all the kids in, as many as they could come in, but they couldn't fit them all in at once because there was too many kids. So they did them in like groups. And as they set down the kids that were succeeding stayed. The ones that didn't, they would replace them and just keep doing that until they went through all the kids.
And were they weeding out the ones that were psychic, you said, right?
Yeah. What it was is what I've come to have. I had a little bit more memories come back where like, and that this was after, you know, seeing Arkeem Rawood, person that is public as Arkeem Rawood. He had talked about the questionnaire that they asked, and I remembered that after that, you know, I had flashes of it. So like they had this questionnaire, and then it went from there to playing this old, like this Atari game that was like, it was called pinball or something like that, but it was on the computer, you know. And so they were, the questions weeded out a lot of the kids, and then the rest of it, which was like pinball game, weeded out a good chunk of them. And then when they started having us play with our eyes closed, we were down to basically roughly, I think it was 3, 6, 7, 8. There was 8 of us in the room at that point. And, you know, they started having us play these games with our eyes closed. And some kids couldn't keep their eyes closed. Like, I would screw around. I knew I could keep my eyes closed, but I would screw around and try to open my eyes. So he walked around and put tape on our eyelids, just regular tape on our eyelids to try to keep them closed. And he did that to me and like I think 2 other kids. But we started playing with our eyes closed, and he basically was teaching us to, you know, just focus and just reach out basically and try to play with our eyes closed. And we started doing that, and it went from there. You know, whatever kids that weren't supposed to be in the room were gone at that point. And once we got pretty good and could see it, and we're playing, and they had us doing multiples of them. Like, we weren't just hitting one pinball. That's how it started. But eventually we were hitting like at least 3 or 4 of them at the same time, you know, or more. And it just kept going from there until finally they decided that when they moved on from that, they brought in VR headsets. And at the time there were no VR headsets that didn't even exist. You know, it was kind of bulky, but more sleek, but not as sleek as the ones that are out now, and not as bulky as when they first came out with them, you know. So I remembered, like, they put that on my head, and it had some kind of stuff that would stick out. And then they had what I know now. At the time I didn't understand what it was, but they had portable heart monitors and brain monitors and stuff. So monitor your brain frequency and also monitor your heart rate and stuff. And they had hooked that up to us while we were in this VR. And there were times where, like, I would take off the headset. I remember taking off the headset specifically one time, and my teacher was standing with this guy, and this guy, he was dressed in a white dress shirt. I believe it was short sleeved, if I remember correctly, and khaki pants and black dress shoes. Okay. And he walked around with this clipboard, and, you know, the yellow notepad that you have. He had a yellow notepad. He would be taking notes. But at the time, he was standing with the teacher, talking to the teacher. And, you know, all of a sudden, the principal of the school had walked over and was like, "What's going on? What are you doing in here?" And he looked in, and the teacher kind of was like, and like walked off into her classroom. And then this guy was standing here, you know, the guy that was what I have come to perceive as a programmer, was standing there and was like, "It doesn't fucking," like, literally started talking, like cussing at him. He's like, "It doesn't fucking matter what I'm doing in here."
And he
the
said
guy
that
was
to the
like,
head teacher.
Yeah, to the principal. And I'm like, he started trying to look in and be like, "Well, what's going on in here? Who are you?" You know, and he's like, "Hey," and just started snapping his fingers in front of him, you know. And about after a few snaps, he got his attention. He's like, and he just sat there, and I don't know if he said specifically what he said, but after that he said, go back to your office and sit in there and shut the door, keep your mouth shut," you know, something along those lines. And literally the principal he was standing up straight when he did it, and he just turned around and just walked back, just left the area.
So do you think your head teacher had alters as well? Was the clicking to trigger the
yeah, I think
alters?
the principal was probably MK Ultra. I know my teacher was MK Ultra at this point. Like, I have more recall of a different alter that ended up doing a lot of crazy shit later. But at the time, you know, when I had taken off my headset, the reason why I did it was because what I would get images of, like, being pushed into an ocean, you know, or dropped into an ocean, pushed off a cliff, stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, you know, you would see this woman, and, like, I recognized who the woman was. It was my teacher, which was kind of weird. And she was having sex with this random dude. I never met the guy, but it was just some random dude. But it would flash. It would be like in the middle, just flash. And
For like a few seconds.
Yeah, just a few seconds. And, you know, he was having sex, and then it would flash away, and then, you know, you would see those images again, and then it would flash again where, you know, she was climaxing, and then it would, you know, go back to what we were watching, and then it flashed again, and he had a knife in his hand, and then it, like, went away, and then it flashed again afterwards, you know, and then he basically started stabbing her and you could hear her scream. And the reason why I took the headset off is because my teacher was still with us that day, which freaked me out, you know, and I never really explained that until like now, basically. But I, you know, at that point, I think that was the process for more of a VR fracturing. But I had taken the headset off and my head hurt really bad, you know, and I looked over and my teacher was there. And then that's how that whole thing unfolded with the principal and stuff, you know.
Of course, yeah.
So I do remember, like, later on, I have some extra memories that came back of them showing us like basically live VR feed of like live video in the VR of, you know, like battlefields, where soldiers were shooting and stuff. And, you know, in a way, I think it was training our subconscious so that, you know, that basically when we started the training, it would just manifest in the conscious mind on how to react. But in the process of all that, you know, when we were even pushing to an ocean and stuff, like the guy that was the programmer would walk around and spray us with the water bottle
to simulate the actual
to simulate it. Yes, I mean, you could tell you were still in VR, but he would simulate it. I just remember getting hit with the mist of the water, being like, the hell. You know, but yeah,
you know what, that was actually one of the questions that I was gonna ask you, and it's not really to do with the list that I sent you, but just because you just mentioned VR, something that I've been thinking about recently is all of these mind fracture programs have obviously been going on for a long time, and sexual trauma is a very old, antiquated way of doing it, right? I mean, it's been going on for thousands of years, literally. So they must now have more advanced techniques to fracture people. And I've always thought, I've always dreaded to think, what are those more advanced techniques? Now they brought AI in, and virtual reality is clearly one of the ways that they don't put a bunch of kids in a room with some VR on. You don't need to, you know, go to the individual, each one, and fracture them all with, you know, separate rituals. You can kind of do it all in one room together with these huge VR headsets on. And I'm assuming that's the kind of thing that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think they were trying it basically at that point. But it was like the problem with that is I still remember getting raped and tortured and stuff.
Of course, yeah, they do that as well.
To be fractured as well, you know, so they still use the rudimentary form of it, but I think they were trying out like how the VR would work, you know, as it was going along with that at that point. But that would make sense, you know.
Yeah.
But I remember as it started going past that, then we had like these nap times, you know, and, you know, knowing now what I know, you know, you don't have nap times in the 3rd grade, but we did.
You definitely don't have nap times in the 3rd grade.
Yeah, we all did, man. And the reason why I remembered it is because I remember we had a substitute come in, and before the substitute came in, our teacher was like,
was it the whole class that had nap time?
Yeah,
just a few
the
kids?
whole class. Yes.
That's
and
awesome.
Yeah, and the teacher, before the substitute had come in the next day, the teacher was like, now you're gonna have a sub come in. Don't tell her about the nap times. And we were like, oh, okay. And some of the kids we still did, specifically me and like I think like 2 other kids. We told her about the nap times, and we were like, yeah, we have nap times. And she was like, what?
Yeah, I bet she was like very confused, to be honest.
Yeah, she was confused as shit, and we still ended up having nap times. And I remember we still got picked up too, because that's what I recall is like those specific points, because they were still like erasing our conscious memories of it. You know, some of it stuck, majority of it stuck, some of it didn't, which was just very little, you know. But I remember I had asked, basically I'd gotten up from laying down, and I had asked, she ended up still letting us have nap times. I think she ended up talking to the teacher after, like coming in the day she was there to ask her about it. But before that happened, like I remember getting up and being like, I need to use the restroom. Or no, I don't even think I didn't even ask her. I just left.
Just got up, yeah.
Yeah, I just started going out, and I remember like not fully being cognitive, but like kind of hearing this voice, like come outside, you know. And I remember like walking out, and she had stopped me. And she's like, "Where are you going?" I was like, I'm just going to the bathroom." She's like, "Well, you need to ask." And I was like, "Oh, okay." She's like, "You can't just walk off. I have to know where you're going." And I was like, "Oh, okay. So can I go to the bathroom?" And she's like, yeah, go ahead. And she had watched me, stood there and watched me. So I went to the bathroom, and I remember waiting in the bathroom. And I remember after a bit, I would peeked out, and she finally walked back into the classroom
Right.
because it was down the hall, and the classroom had like double doors. And from that point, I had just followed orders, walked out, and I remember blacking out again. And then coming to, and I was basically outside shutting the van door and
Right.
hearing the guy say, "Now shut the van door."
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, I mean, I don't know how much more you want me to go into that, but it was basically the two guys that were there, they were dressed in white short sleeve dress shirts, khaki pants, black combat boots.
Is this
And
the
they
same?
had,
Is this the same? The two people that were there, one of them was the same programmer from the
no,
team.
these
Right.
were two different guys. And I remember like freaking out, and I didn't even see the other kids at the time. I was just seeing the guy that was in the driver's seat and the other guy that was in the passenger seat riding shotgun.
Yeah.
And I started freaking out, being like, strange, I was like, stranger danger, stranger
Yeah.
danger. That's what I was taught,
Of course. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and he was like, "Hey, shh," he was like, "Shut the fuck up," And the other guy was like, the other guy that was riding shotgun was like, "Well, just hit him with the syringe." And he was like,
All right.
"No, I told you to shut the fuck up," And I was like, and I just kept screaming it. And then all of a sudden, when I was saying that, I just started hearing the other kids. And I had basically looked over and saw one kid sitting next to me, and there was three kids sitting right behind me and three kids sitting behind them. So there was 8 of us all together in the van. And they started going, and when I looked at them, they were basically, I mean, at this point, they were what I understand is and can tell, they were all blitzed out of their fucking minds,
Mm-hmm.
like higher than a kite.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yep.
he finally he had basically, I had peered back and I was really scared at that point.
Yeah. I fucking bet.
And he had taken off his seatbelt and he's like, "God damn it," and like basically opened his door and he's like, "I'm gonna fucking deal with this shit," and like got out, slid open the van door, and I started trying to fight him. Like I was like trying to fight him off, and I think I bit him, and he lurched back and he was like, "Oh, really?" And then like punched me in the head. And at that point it was over because I'm only like a little kid at that
Of
point.
course.
So
Yeah. Yeah. What else can you do?
and the guy was like, "You didn't have to do that," And then he like reached over and he had grabbed my head and then pulled out a syringe, and he used his teeth as he like grabbed my head and lurched my head to the side. He pulled out the syringe, took the cap, put it in his mouth, took off the cap, let out some of the liquid, and then like pushed it in my neck and just basically used it, and then reached over. And when he reached over, I noticed the anchor and the compass tattooed on his forearm.
Okay.
And as I was sitting there all like kind of dazed out, he put the seatbelt on me. I was like, "What's that?" And he noticed that I noticed, and he's like, "Don't worry about it," basically. And I was like,
So what was it? A
okay. And he's like,
compass and
"Yeah, it was it was like the true north symbol,
yeah. Yeah.
but basically the true north symbol, and it was the anchor, which is normally a tattoo for the Navy.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. That's what I was.
And that's how I realized, after I started really searching, after I realized what I was basically a part of, I started searching.
Mm-hmm.
And I had remembered a few of the training things, and they took us to Randall Park Mall, which was it was an abandoned mall, but we had gone to a different location, and we had gotten off the freeway on the way to LAX. And because Randall Park Mall is nowhere near where I lived or my school or LAX, but I think we had gone through like some kind of portal. We had gotten out of the van, parked in this garage. We gotten out and we just went, like they opened some portal. We went through a portal. We ended up in Randall Park Mall. The internal area of Randall Park Mall, you can look it up. It was all abandoned inside. The only way to get into some of the stores that were still active during the day was to go from the outside in to those stores and then back out to leave. You could never get into the internal guts of it.
Right.
And I remember being there, and I found the location by looking up malls, abandoned malls, actually, specifically. It took me a while, but I
Yeah, I bet
tracked
it
it
did.
down. And I ended up finding photos of it, and I was like, holy shit, and I already remembered some of the stuff because they couldn't erase it all. And I don't know why, but I had fun, doing these little battlefield exercises,
Mhm.
and they
Mhm.
dressed us up, and like we would do PT too. I started to remember some of the PT and stuff. And I remember basically we had these laser rifles, and you'd shoot the kids and it would electrocute them, like when you
Mhm.
hit their armor, their body armor that they had, and it would electrocute the shit out of you, like bad. Like you did not want to get shot, especially more than once.
God. But
Sometimes
was
some
it?
of the kids would be like, one would shoot you and another one would shoot you, and then like or later on they would get more violent, and it would be like there would be like 4 people shooting one person,
Jesus.
as we
Was it
started
happening?
building.
Was there a dumb under the mall? Because I've heard tons of people say that malls are a really popular place for dumbs to be under.
No. When we went in there, it was strictly just the inside of the mall.
Ah.
We'd come through
Mhm.
and end up inside the mall. And I had memories come up and surface after where what originally happened is we were brought in there. There was a group of men that some were in uniforms, some had suits, but they were on this. It was only two levels, okay? Because I basically found it and realized that there's only 2 levels to that mall, and in the middle where you walk up the staircase, there's an area where you can sit. All right, and this is where they decided to start seeing who would be put for the assassin programming.
Right.
Okay, well we had physical combat, hand to hand, untrained, just basically beat the shit out of each other.
Mhm.
And the first kid that won, the kid I went up against, I could sense that his dad beat him a lot. And he basically pictured me when he was attacking me and beat the shit out of me.
Right,
He
because I'm
pictured his
assuming
dad.
all of you guys that were there had your psi abilities were on point, right? So I'm assuming
Yeah,
you're all.
well, it's like mine really weren't at that point. Like they weren't where they needed to be. I
Hence
I
training.
happenstance to actually be the last person where I could go and like speak in people's minds. Like I remember how that went down. It was kind of weird, but it was like this kid, he beat the shit out of me. So the first thing they did is they had a box of kittens, and they pulled, the guy that was there, he was the same guy that punched me in the head. you know he basically was our instructor, and he had pulled a kitten out, and he handed this kid a kitten, and then he handed him a knife, and he's like, kill the kitten. And this kid was like, I don't want to do it. And he was like, all right, took the knife, took the kitten back. And then he looked at me and he called me over, and he's like, he handed me the kitten, handed me the knife, and he's like, kill the kitten. And at that point I was like pissed because I got my ass beat. I was like,
Of
okay,
course.
well, clearly I could say no, or I could just kill the kid, and so I took the kitten, I took the knife, and I basically just stabbed the kitten. And when I did, the guy had sat there and said, did you just do that because he didn't do it and he beat your ass? And I was like, yes. And he was kind of flustered about it, but the guys that were at that area where they were sitting down were like, just put him in, you know. They were like, they were like, put him in the program, he's good,
Yeah, he's
you
good to
know.
go. And that was part of
And
the assassin training, the
yeah,
assassin
so
program, right?
so at that point, what they were doing is they were taking us, and I believe that they probably put us in clones
Mhm.
to go into a different program, and then we were still there being trained as well, so I got trained in the assassin program, and I remember bits and pieces of the beginning training. I remember being brought into this underground dumb, like this underground base. Basically, it was like an underground base. I don't even think it was like humongous. It wasn't that big from what I recall. But there was this hallway, and they had two doors that when you came in, there was two doors. One door was on the right hand side. The other door was a little further on the right hand side. And I remember not being able to pass, because what they do is they drag, you would go in, you would sit down, and this has been explained by quite a few other people now, but you would go and you would sit down at this table. There'd be this guy. He was dressed in a white dress shirt, but it was full sleeve, and he would sit in front of you, and he'd put this pistol in front of you, and these two guys would drag this fucking guy in with a black bag over his head and put him in the corner in a chair, and he'd be screaming, and he didn't know why the hell he was there. Mm-hmm. So you would he would sit there and say, pick up the pistol and execute him. And I remember saying, why? What did he do? And he said, it doesn't matter. Execute him. He's a terrorist.
Yep.
And I remember saying no. And then I remember getting basically dragged out. And I remember coming back later, and we showed up early. When we did, this guy came out of the other room. And when he did, he opened the door, and I saw that there was a guy that was dressed like a general in a military uniform. And there was a few guys that were in lab coats, and a few guys that were in more of a scientist, wear than just laboratory wear.
Yeah.
And this guy came out and was like, he was like, you're here too early. There's already somebody in there. And it was him and the guy that hit me in the head. He brought me there. They were going at it. He was like, well, it's not my fucking fault. He's like, I brought him. He's here. It's your problem now, basically.
Right.
And he was like, fine. And he just looked at me. He's like, you stand right here in the hallway and you don't move. And I was like, okay, and I remember him going back into the room. All of a sudden I heard gunfire, like 2 gunshots, I think it was. And this kid had come out. He opened this door. This kid had blonde hair. It was long. It was down to his shoulders. He was around the same age I was, blue eyes. His eyes were cold, like he was already wound up.
Yeah.
At that point. And he came out, and when he opened the door, he went like this. He went out. He looked at me, walked up, pointed the pistol at my face, and he was like, friend or foe? And I was like, and he's like, friend or foe? And I was like, friend, I'll be your friend. And I recognized the pain in his eyes, and I knew it. I understood it. I knew what he was going through. And he was like, oh, okay. And he put the pistol down, just put it off to the side. And I was about to talk to him, and the guy came out that was yelling at the guy, my instructor. He came out. He was like, and when he did, the kid lifted up the pistol again and pointed it at him and was getting ready to shoot him. He was like, you passed, put the pistol down now, And I just remember after that, they had taken the kid off, and they brought me in later. They took me away and then brought me back, and did the whole thing again. And they were like, pick up the pistol and execute him. And at that point I was like, it's just going to keep happening. So I picked up the pistol and I cocked that shit. I just basically went over and I was like, boom, shot him in the head. And they were like, he was like, okay. And I just sat there and I put the pistol back down, and I just sat there, and that's basically the memory I have of that point.
Did you ever see that boy again, the blonde haired boy, at any point during your missions, or
No,
was that
not that I
the only
remember.
time? No,
That was the only time. I think he probably went into some other unit.
of course. Yeah.
He either was solo or in a hit squad. Normally we're put in a hit squad, because I remember getting picked up to do hits later on. But I don't remember the missions. I just remember being picked up for that.
Yeah.
And I remember my unit. My unit was all the kids that I was with at that school.
Of course, yeah.
But I remember being trained periodically. Like I have 2 memories of being trained there at that mall. Okay, so from that point, that's all I remember with that. But I remember being at the mall. I remember having the rifles, and we got dressed up, and basically got told, our instructor was like, this is a battle royale. You know, he basically, that's what it was. He's like, you're going to shoot each other and whoever's the last person standing wins, you know? So we all went at it, and I wasn't good at it, you know. It was probably I was like the second to the worst probably. And the other kids, you know, they went at it, and at some point, you know, it almost felt like laser tag. That's the way it was. And at some point, I have another memory where we got to a point where it was, okay, now you're gonna find partners. So I found the kid that was better than me, the one that was right above me, not the best, but above me, kind of. And I went and tried to hang out with him because all the other kids paired up, and we were it. And the only other kid that was there was the worst one, and I was like, fuck that guy, you know. There was another kid that was off doing something, and I didn't even, you know, there wasn't even an option. So I ended up going with this guy, and he was like, get away from me. I was like, hey man, we got to pair up, okay, you know. So we ended up pairing up, and then we fought together, and we weren't the best, but you know, we did our best, but we weren't the best. Well, eventually, you know, I mainly followed him around, you know, when we were fighting, and we would fight all around this mall. And, you know, eventually there was a third memory where the guy, basically, our instructor, was like, okay, now you're going to pair up into groups, into a whole group, two different squads, basically. And we did that. So all the kids that were good paired up on one unit.
Of course, yeah. Top four went,
and all the shitty ones went to ours. You know. So, and we were like, fuck it, hey, it is what it is, and we just rolled with it, you know. And you know, there were a few other kids that were there that weren't from my school, so there was a pretty good group of kids, you know. So we ended up pairing up, and then they started teaching us that we had to move silently. We had to use our abilities to speak into each other's minds so that nobody could hear us speak, you know, to basically become silent, just a silent hit squad unit of killers. And I remember being the last fucking kid there to be able to go into people's heads. And what had happened is we were hiding out behind the pillar, like the picture that showed up on Gaia, where the guy was talking about, you know, this abandoned mall, you know. And I recognized it because I remember being there, and I remember that pillar, and I remember shooting that pillar. And then that's why that pillar is missing in the photos,
right? Because
we shot at it and basically destroyed it, and it fell to the ground.
Yeah.
And we used it to hide behind. I remember it being in the center, like pieces had broken off, and it broke into the center. And this little rounded area. And I remember we were hiding at that time. We were hiding in the pillar behind that. Like, he was hiding behind the pillar. Me and a bunch of other kids were hiding behind that little wall where there was that planter that was there. And he was like, okay, we're just going to rush in and just kill as many as we can, take out as many as we can, basically. And I remember saying, that's a stupid idea. You keep trying to make us do things that we keep losing. And I had a better idea. And he was like, you're stupid. You can't even talk to us. You can't even speak to us in our heads. And I was like, I got pissed at that.
That would have pissed me off too. I'm not going to lie.
You know, he's like, yeah, he basically was like, you're the dumbest one here.
Yeah,
like,
more or less.
Who are you to talk? You know? So I ended up, like, I just remember forcing myself to do it. And I remember when I did it, I screamed in their heads. And I was trying to say it specifically to him, but I screamed in their heads and I said, fuck you. And when I did, he was like, whoa. And like all the other kids were like, oh, you know. And
was that it? Was that the first time you did it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first time I did it. And when I did that, it was wild. I was like shocked. And they were like, whoa, he can do it. I heard them in my head and I was like, whoa, you know, because I couldn't hear them in my head. They would have to speak out loud because of me,
of course,
which got us caught, you know.
Of course.
We whispered basically. But at that point they were like, well, if he could do that, let's what do you think we should do? You know, the other kids spoke up, and I was like, here, I'll show you. And I just showed them images of what I wanted to do. And basically what it was is I said, you know, I told them basically, I'll run into the center and take all the fire, and hopefully I'll get to the center and they'll keep firing on me. And while I'm doing that, you guys need to sneak around and take them out, flank them.
Smart.
And when I did that, they were like, that's actually a pretty good idea. And the other kid that was basically our unit leader at the time, that's what he was looked at as, was like, that is, I guess it's a good idea, you know? And I was just like, and they were like, we should do what he said, you know? The other kids chimed up, and we were speaking in each other's heads. So I got it through, you know, they agreed to do what I was talking about. So I remember being scared shitless, because even though it was a great idea, it was like I had to run, and I was so scared I was going to get shot to shit. Yeah. You know, and these other kids, like, I could tell that they were at that point, this was a whole different group of kids. They were a lot older than we were, or no, sorry. It was the same kids, you know, that we had been training with the whole time. It was a later one where they changed out the group. But anyways, we ended up like holding my rifle, and I was like just trying to build up the courage, you know. I was like, well, I'm in it now, you know. So I just remember being like, all right, I got this. I'm just gonna fucking run as fast as I can for my life, basically. And I just remember running, and I remember thinking the whole time, man, if I get shot, I'm gonna get shot so many times, this is gonna hurt so bad, you know. And I remember running like I'd never ran before. And I got to the center of that pillar, that broken pillar that was on the ground, because we had shot it down at that point.
Yeah.
You know, so it was like we had shot it down previous, but where the pillar normally was is where the kid was hiding in that wall area. But so I just remember holding the rifle, and I ran and I slid, and I made it barely, and they were like, oh, I remember hearing them say, oh, this is going to be easy. You know, one of the kids popped off. I was like, this is going to be easy. Shoot him, you know? So they started shooting, and like, I ended up just being lucky, I guess, you know? And I got up against the thing, and I just remember hearing the fucking shots hit the fucking, just keep hitting and hitting. And I'm like, man, I hope my unit starts doing
They
something.
better be fucking moving.
Yeah, you know, they did. All of a sudden I was hearing fire, and then all of a sudden I started hearing less and less fire, and other fire from my team basically hitting them. And then these kids going, ow, shit, oh shit, they're all around us, shit, ow, bam, you know. And then all of a sudden I heard no fire from them, and you know, that was it. And I just was like, holy shit.
It worked.
Yeah. And I just remember I got called in. There was different rooms that were vacant, you know, that they used to have stores in them and stuff. But I was called in to the second, I think it was the second floor, and there was glass windows all across, you know, where you could just see right in. And the instructor had put me in there and basically just dressed me down. He was like, you know, why did you disobey orders from your unit leader? He's the one who was in charge. And you know, I just remember standing there at attention the whole time, and I had already been undressed from my armor, you know. And I just remember saying, you know, his idea was fucking stupid, and we weren't going to win. So I decided that
So you took some
what I could
fucking
do was
initiative,
better.
basically.
Yeah. So I was like, so I decided that what I was doing was better, and we succeeded. You know, clearly he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. You know, I just remember just talking back to this guy, you know, and he's just like, he stopped and thought for a minute. He's like, all right, you want to be the unit leader? He's like, I'll give you 2 weeks. That's what he said. I'll give you 2 weeks to prove yourself. He's like, if you can prove yourself, I'll make you can be the unit leader from now on. And I was like, okay. You know, I just remember saying, yes, sir. I didn't even say, I said, yes, sir, you know. And, you know, we had done PT and stuff throughout that mall as well. You know, they would train us, you know, they'd get us to do PT and stuff like that periodically as well. And I just remember the next memory I have is just me running up. I just remember, you know, being scared and just this altar taking over. And I come to find out it's my alter John, who
So this is
served
what I
in
was
Solar
going to
Warden.
say. Which auto was being programmed at
Yeah.
the at the mall?
Yeah, it just so happened that my alter John surfaced, and he basically took over. I blacked out, he took over. And I have some memories of it where I just remember he was brutal. He ran up to this kid that was standing on a pile of rubble and just ran up on him, took the butt of the rifle and just smashed his face and started opening fire on a bunch of other people. And basically he was controlling the unit.
He was
And
the unit leader, yeah?
Yeah, he was the unit leader. And at that point, they had brought in a group of older kids. So we were fighting older kids and we fucked their shit up. And I remember after them having to shake our hands. And I remember their unit leader walked up and was like, this is just beginner's luck, you know? And I just remember that. And I just remember, you know, I don't remember fully what all happened other than that. And I just remember I kicked ass. And I remember later on, the Joint Chiefs of Staff from 2001 to 2002, give or take, were all there, dressed in their uniforms. At the time, I didn't know what their names were. And I didn't even know they were Joint Chiefs of Staff when I first came out, you know, but I remember their faces and I went and found them, just like I found the fucking mall, you know. And
were these the people
you know,
that you put on the Fractal Weapons page about a week?
yes.
Okay, right. So what I'll do is I'll
Yes.
drag that. I'll get that photo up and I'll put that in here so people can see.
Yeah, so that was the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And I remember Vernon E. Clark. I remember the other guys, you know, and I remember the reason why I remember Vernon E. Clark, like their name tags, by the way, were blacked out, but I remember the 4 stars and I remember going into all their mines. I went into each one of their mines while they were there. One of them, that was the Navy guy. He felt like he should shake my hand, and that's what I got from him. To, you know, and he does that in the here and now, by the way. But because I tracked down videos and listened to, I even called them.
Oh, really?
I tracked down every one of them, where they lived, got their phone numbers, tried to call a few of them. He's the only one that answered. I know that he has alters, so you know, he wasn't doing it of his own volition. You know what I mean? But he shook my hand. He had walked up and said, "Oh, I'm going to shake their hand." And my trainer was like, "Sir, I don't think you should do that." And he's like, "Of course, you know, they're serving. You know, they should be honored. You know."
Why
and he
did
was
he want
like,
you to shake his hand? Just to,
I think maybe he thought that might cause a problem and cause maybe memory recall. I don't know.
yeah, right, yeah.
At that point, you know, but he walked up and shook my hand. He shook all the kids' hands, and he was like, "Thank you for your service." And I was like, "Yes, sir." You know, and that guy is the guy that I served on I served on a ship in space in Solar Warden.
And that was with the secret space program, yeah?
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So
and that
now you need to give an explanation of what that is for the people on my channel that don't know, because I know for a fact there's a lot of people that aren't even aware of the secret space program, because I made a community post this week saying that I had you on, and I had a lot of questions asking me what the secret space program even was. So
okay, so it's called the secret space program. Basically, it's the program that's been secret this entire time. What it is that, you know, we made deals with certain alien groups to get technology. We reverse engineered it. You know, you have all these different people that have come out and said that they worked on reverse engineering craft, like Bob Lazar and other people, right? And he proved that he worked in Area 51. He proved he was getting paid. That's basically what they were doing. Lockheed Martin, you know, you have William Tompkins, who came out and said, or no, it wasn't Lockheed Martin. It was, I think he worked for one of the big companies, but he came out, he's verified who he is. The guy that worked on a separate program that was mirroring that one, that was just coming up with ideas that they couldn't figure out shit, came out with them. You know, you can go look that up. He said the Solar Warden was real. He was talking about real stuff for Solar Warden. I think he was naval intelligence before he did that. He wrote a book. He died shortly after the first book. They finished up the second one, and I think they were gonna work on his third one at this point.
was that William Tompkins, did you say?
Yes, William Tompkins. He came out publicly and stated that. So you can go look it up. That's verified. A verified individual came out.
Right. Now,
you know?
for the people on my channel, there is a clip. I'm pretty sure if me and Joseph are talking about the same person here, there is a clip in one of my videos where I'm pretty sure it is William Tompkins, and he's talking to a female interviewer and he's explaining about how when the US tried to first go to the moon, they went up there and were met by an army of Dracos, and they didn't even land on the moon. They hovered over it. You know, they saw the Dracos and, you know, pretty much hauled ass, I'm assuming, or maybe not, unless you know, you could elaborate on what happened when that happened.
I mean, I don't know what happened there at that time, because that was probably before my time. But basically, this is when they had first started. You know, they had some craft, and they had just begun the process of doing what they were doing in space. I would assume, because of the way he explained it and stuff. But basically, he was naval intelligence, and they started getting information about these Dracos and all this other crazy shit that was happening with World War II, when they were fighting the Nazis, and how they were using cloning and all sorts of different shit. And he basically would get the information from people that were undercover in as Nazis on these bases, and they would basically give him the information, and he had to relay it to, I think Rick Abada was the person over him. Okay, so you know that basically he can explain it better than I could about how it all started up. I mean, I read his book, but you know, that's basically started up because of World War II, because the Germans had made a treaty or some kind of deal with the Draco, and when they did that, they got technology, and in exchange, I think they had to give them a certain amount of humans, as basically payment. You know, which is the same thing that the people that own our planet do, which are the Shahami.
Yep.
You know, and they have to pay them a tax, and
so you said
an annual tax.
The Shahami, right? Did you say?
Yeah, the
right.
Shahami.
So I only first heard that term when I ran into Penny's work. So I'd never heard that term before. I've been researching this stuff for quite a while now. Are the Shahami the Anunnaki?
Yes, basically.
Right. But that's
they're
what
the ones that
themselves.
Yeah, that's what the race is known as, is the Shahami. They don't. Some of them are here on the planet. The majority aren't. They live on their own. I think they have like 2 planets that I know of at this point. I have pretty much next to no recall of them, you know. But what it is they're basically the ones who we perceive as gods,
right? Yeah,
on the planet, and you know they've been using us as slaves this entire time. And what they do is we are the gross domestic product on the planet, and they basically give us away. I think you have to give like 8% or 10% of gross domestic product annually to the Draco Empire, which we reside in.
Is that the Draco tax?
Yes.
Right. Now, how did that come about? Do you want to try and pull that apart a little bit?
How did that come about? I'm not sure. This happened probably a long time ago. But the Draco tax everybody that lives in their empire. It's just like our governments tax us. It's the same process.
But that taxes humans.
Yeah, basically the payment is humans, and you know, on different planets it's different gross domestic product, not necessarily humans, or
you
know, it's other things, but we are the gross domestic product basically. But that's the reality of that situation. But the Draco made a deal with them, and they gave the Germans a place on the moon. Solar Warden and our American government were catching up. But the CIA, but our government had made a deal with the Germans. We made a treaty because Penny has talked about it, but they did the flyover over the White House, and that was the Germans.
Was that the triangle crafts, the pyramid crafts?
No, the triangle crafts are the American, are American.
Right.
You know, their crafts are different, but you know, it's out there. You can look that stuff up. Like, it's just I think they have like teardrop ships and stuff from what I recollect, and what other people do for the Germans. And they also have like these like the round ones, but they have like the Iron Cross on it, and then they have like, you know, they have like a big gun on the bottom, and they have like little guns all around and stuff. But you know, from even Penny's said it, but basically when you're on those craft, they're the older ones, and they have high levels of radiation. You know, so it kills the people that serve on those craft. You know, I remember them being more like transport craft in a sense, but anyways, past that, that's basically how that all started. And we've been playing catch up. And in the process, the CIA has been kidnapping kids and basically giving them as the tax to the Germans as part of the treaty. Their treaty basically was, we won't be public to the population if you give us X, like I think it's, you know, 1 million kids a year, you know, and their thinking at the time Penny's talked about, you know, is, I don't know if that came from her recall or where she got the info, but basically it was, you give us a certain amount of kids, and the Germans thought they were going to keep them. Like their plan was to keep them and bring them into their colonies and grow their colonies larger and larger. And the CIA decided they were going to shoot pretty much all of us up with Draco DNA. So they couldn't put us in their population. So I'm assuming that they did it at some level.
Yeah.
And a shit ton of kids went missing, and they were like, okay, so if they think they're going to keep them, we're going to make it to where they're not going to want to. I would assume that's what probably happened.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think they just did it on purpose and just shot them up right off the bat, you know. So besides that, that's basically what the Germans took. And the Germans had to make a sub deal because they wanted a shit ton of women as part of their deal with the Draco Empire, as part of payment to be on the moon. They had a base in Antarctica at the time. And you also have the other individual for Operation High Jump, and that's where the Navy basically got their asses kicked. You know, they went there with a shit ton of ships.
It was in ships. The US went over there in 47, right? And it was supposed to be just a little expedition, but they literally took a fucking army.
Yeah,
they took like 5,000 people over there.
Yeah, and they came back with pretty much next to nothing.
They got their asses handed to them by the Germans over there.
Yeah, basically the Draco came out in ships out of the water and basically just destroyed them, decimated them. And he came out. And the
flyover that happened was that, I'm sure I've heard one of you guys from the SSP circle talk about how that was just them flexing, because that happened just after Paperclip, the flyover. Yeah,
that was the Germans basically, you know, I would say laying their dicks on our face, but yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I guess that would be the best way to explain it. I know that's a little vulgar, but whatever. You know, that's the reality.
This whole topic is fucking vulgar, dude. Like,
yeah. So basically that's how that all started, and that's how we got into this situation. And Solar Warden was set up to take the war into space to fight the Nazis. And what they do is, anyways, that's basically who that altar ended up serving with. But before that, it was the training. And I remember, like, that's basically the last memory I have of the training in that mall, because I haven't really focused on it, you know, because I've had so much recall come back after it came out. But I know that I have a shit ton of altars at this point. Like, I thought I just had 10, because I remember when I was still there, like, between the training, like, I remember being brought back, and then they started, like, this was like right before that last part, right, where John serviced. They had me write down what the programmer said was 10 cool names.
Yeah.
You know, so I had been writing down 10 names, and I thought I only had like 10 altars or something, but it was, I have recall where it was a daily thing until I basically wrote down all the names for at least 2,000 altars at minimum that I can say that I probably have. But at this point, I've only named a certain amount of them, and I only have a certain amount of recall from a certain amount of them, a pretty good chunk of them at this point. But
which one do you have the most recall from?
At this point, that would be Jimmy, and Jimmy is the one who served at Montauk.
Which is what I wanted to get into next. I wanted for you to just detail your experiences at Montauk.
Sure. So you want me to jump then? Straight to Montauk, or?
So did you serve in Solar Warden and then go to Montauk?
No. So what it was is, how how that whole thing with Solar Warden happened was I didn't go into service there until I was around at Montauk until after I had served. And I had been taken. Okay, so what happened was I remember I was at home. I was playing outside, and we had this area because my stepdad basically had built our home, and we had this big pile of dirt in the middle. He had taken out dirt from the middle of it, so there's just this big crater of dirt that I used to play in. And I remember the ship. It was silver, and it flew over, and it like basically hovered, and I just blacked out. And I was roughly around 8 or 9, and this is after I had named one of my altars Pindar. Okay, so Pindar had been taken to what's known as House Shaw. And House Shaw basically is a branch bloodline family. So it's a bloodline family, and it's branches of different branches of family of that bloodline. And each generation has to build resources for their next generation and basically run shit. And it's a Draco integrated family. They work directly with the Draco specifically. We do have Draco DNA and stuff, and all the individuals that were there were reared to be basically Pindars on different planets, not just ours, but there's different ones that were reared to be here, and my altar happened to be the one that they picked. Probably because of how insanely ruthless he was.
So
but he ended
Pindar
up,
is a title, not an individual entity.
yeah, no, that's an individual altar, but it is also a title.
Right.
But I had this being when I was writing this name. I was writing names. I had this being telepathically contact me, and it was a white Draco, an alpha white draconian, and he contacted me telepathically and said, "Write down the name Pindar." And he hit it was with a hiss, because he's reptilian, he's not even human. So, but it was a deep voice, very strong. And I was like, okay, how do you spell it? And I could sense the frustration when he was having to do it. And he responded like, ugh. And then he was like, he spelled it out. And then he was like, this is how you spell it. And I remember I spelled it out, and I was like, okay. Didn't say shit after that. I was like, all right. And then I handed the paper to the guy, and the programmer went down the list of names, and he stopped at Pindar. He's like, why did you write this name down? And I said, I was told to. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I like the name. At first I was like, I like the name. And he's like, well, write a different one. I was like, I was told to write this one down. And that's when he like freaked out. Like his eyes got big, and he was like, oh, okay, this, and when he did that, they had started the process of putting, after I got all the names down, they decided they started the process of the series of numbers and the name of the altar. And that's how they used for your activation codes. And I remember having to read off this card, and then what he would do is they put this stuff on your head, like these little things on your head, and they would electrocute you if you didn't read it properly. And even if you did, they would still electrocute the shit out of you. And the point of that was to create an altar, the first one of the child altars, that if you started remembering, you would have pain in your head and you would stop thinking about it.
Right.
And I kept remembering, like, he just did it on purpose to hurt me. And I was like, why are you doing this to me? And he was like, and just he hit me in the temples again, and as that was going on, that's some of the memories I've had of that, and that was part of creating, like, basically reinforcing one of my altars to be an enforcer to stop the rest of the memories from flooding through from other altars, so I never remember.
Almost like a gatekeeper.
Yeah, I was a gatekeeper basically. And he's a little kid, and I've literally, in a way, like, I've embraced him and told him everything would be okay. And since then, I haven't really got too much pain in my head, other than like here recently. But it's, it's like anytime that happens, if I just try to find him and embrace him, he calms down and just lets it roll, But anyways, it's like, so that's what they did. And then after that, that's when John took over. That's when basically I had that altar named John, and he took over. And what they did is, I remember about when I was 12 was when he was taken. But beyond that, we're going into Pindar. So Pindar, Pindar was already basically named at this point. I was still, I think, like 8 at the time, between 8 or 9. I was still a kid, and the ship came, grabbed me. I went into space, and I was taken to this house on some planet. I think it would be the moon. I'm not sure, but I lived there with a bunch of other kids. I recognize those people's faces. Some of them are public, some aren't. And we basically were, if you messed up at all, you would be beaten. You know, you'd be beaten and tortured by these Draco. Like, it was horrible. And I remember just growing up. And I remember one time I was about to get in trouble, and I blamed one of the other kids. And when I did that, he was liked by a bunch of the other kids that were there, and it turned them all against me. So that altar, between being tortured and having basically anybody that was around him be turned against him, he became self-reliant and very narcissistic and brutal. And basically it was all about himself.
Yeah, self-preservation.
Yeah, he was basically raised up that the sky's the limit, nothing is off limits. You know, and we didn't trade in money, we traded in resources. And that altar had a lot of them. Some of the other altars that were there had more, some didn't. But I remember, like, they gave us these baby dragons as well that we had to raise. And they were supposed to be there to protect us. I'm not sure how all that went. Like, they were supposed to be like lifetime companions. And I remember, like, I had a baby dragon. It was a black dragon, and we financed that house, specifically financed Solar Warden. And the school that's called, you know, the person that remembered it hasn't publicly stated it, so I'm not going to state it. You know,
Yeah, that's cool, man.
That's their stuff. But for me, I just remember meeting that person, and I had some recall. It was a joint recall, but you know, that person remembers some, and then I remembered quite a bit of it too. And that altar Pindar had been an adult at that point. And I remember I would find clones of people that were us.
Right.
You know, they were being used in different programs.
Yeah.
And basically, you know, we had this little weird thing going on, and it was quick, and I never really got to do much, but that person was nice. So I'd given her my dragon, and it wasn't even that big at that point. And I gave it to her to protect her. Well, Solar Warden took it, and they basically took it to an underground dump, and it's somewhere on this planet, and they basically tortured it and all sorts of shit. And they basically have it in their possession. Well, as he got older, he remembered that. And there had been these two individuals that were diplomats. One was for Nacht, Waffen, and the other one, it was for Solar Warden. And they showed up, and I remember sitting in this chair, you know, at this place, which wasn't on the planet, and basically going back and forth, and they were asking for money, basically resources to make themselves stronger, you know, as a group. And I remember, like, at first I was thinking about Solar Warden, and I told him, you know, I know that you have my dragon. I want it back. You want resources? I want my dragon back. And I was like, and I want to serve, you know, and because I don't know, he just was bored. So he's like, hey, you know, maybe I could serve and, you know, do travel and do some fun stuff, you know. And he also said, but I don't like your uniforms. He's like, but I'll pay, and I'll replace all your uniforms for free. And the guy that was the diplomat was like, well, you know, he thought about it, and, you know, the other guy was like, well, you know, he said, we'll give you a higher position. And, you know, the guy from Nacht, he was like, and he was like, they already had black uniforms. as well that he liked. He was like, okay, these are, these are actually nice. He liked black uniforms for some weird reason. That was his niche. But, this diplomat from Solar Warden was like, well, we'll give you a high position, but we're not changing our uniforms. And he was like, oh, okay. And they were like, and we'll have to see about, this thing that you're talking about. And he was like, you know what? Never mind. And he ended up deciding to go with Nacht. And when he did, he gave him free reign of his resources. And they gave him a position as, I think, well, it was captain, but I think in German it's Kapitän or something like that. But he gave him position, and that's where my altar, Pindar, met Penny's altar. And, I know that altar's name, but I don't have permission to give that altar's name out. So I'm not going to. Anyways, I served on that ship. That service was 60 years. Now, there was, throughout that 60 years, the stuff I had already talked about had been occurring. And there's a lot more other fucked shit that was happening on that ship. This altar is, like, I've had recall recently. It is not good. Like, that guy was a piece of shit. Everybody hates him for a reason. I'll just put it that way. A good reason.
Pindar, you're talking about?
Yeah. Like, he was evil, he ordered the destruction of planets, embraced it, had free reign of the ship, didn't have to, he also, as part of the agreement, he didn't have to really adhere to any rules and regulations except for, the most necessary ones. He basically could do whatever the fuck he wanted, and the thing is the resources he provided were so such an extreme level that they built their shit up pretty quick because of it, and they became really, really powerful because of it. And that altar really believes that he owns Waffen, which is quite awkward,
Yeah.
But yeah, even though he's not in charge of it,
And you're still having recall of that altar now?
Yeah. I got in contact, like, I'm in contact with somebody, they're not public, but they started talking, and I started having even more recall and remembering what they were talking about, finishing what they were saying. And, we were going back and forth. That person served on the ship, and it was pretty intense. I mean, I can go into, maybe I'll go into one thing separate from, going around collecting the Draco tax and stuff, which is what our main mission was. There was a point where, there was we had this guy. So we had these individuals that were on the deck of the ship, and there was this guy that was on the deck, and he would disrespect my altar. And my altar, basically, at some point, we had another guy that was on the deck that was gay. And he was openly gay, very flamboyant. And he looked over at this other guy at some point, and he was like, if you don't shut the fuck up, I'm gonna order him to fuck you in your ass. And the guy that was gay had stopped doing what he's doing, because he was just typing away, at one of these little things, and he stopped and he looked over and he's like, what? Like, he's like, he gave me this look, like, he gave this look like, what? I'm not even he gave the look like, I'm not even involved in this shit.
Keep me the fuck out.
Yes, that's exactly the look, and mind you, that guy, the reason why I said that is because Pindar could go into people's minds. Simple, just smooth. And he went into his mind. He knew that he was attracted to this dude, but this dude was straighter than an arrow, and he was married. He had a wife on the ship. And this guy just kept going. And one of the days, that altar was pissed. And this guy was like running his mouth, standing behind him, and he was standing on the deck of the ship. And the gay dude was over doing his job, and not that it really matters that he was gay or not. I'm just, that's just the reality. And this guy was just running his mouth. And, my altar, Pindar, had just looked over his shoulder and said, if you don't shut up, you're going to get fucked in the ass. And he said, you're not going to fucking do that. I'm not going to let it happen. And he said, okay. He looked over the guy and he said, fuck him in the ass. That's an order. And the guy was like, oh, And he's like, that's an order. And he's like, okay. And he looked over the dude, and the dude had walked in front of him, I think at that point, and was like, when he was running his mouth on him, he wasn't going to do it. Well, my altar could take people's bodies over and control them with his abilities. And he basically grabbed a hold of him, took over his body and bent him over. And this guy basically raped him on the deck of the ship. And when he did that, this guy, man, he just stayed away from me after that.
I was going to say, I bet he never opened his mouth again.
He did, but it took a long time. And he had said something that pissed him off. It was way later on, but he knew that he had a wife on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a best friend on the ship. Well, unbeknownst to my alter Pindar, he didn't know that that dude's wife and that dude's friend really liked each other, and they did want to have sex, but they never did it.
Right.
Well, he basically called those two on to the deck of the ship and ordered them to have sex
Fucking hell.
in front of this guy, and stood there. And when he did that, the woman was like, okay, like didn't even say no. It was like, okay. And they both ended up on the deck of the ship. They had sex on the deck, and then he had looked over. And when he was looking over, this guy's face, because when he was watching it, when Pindar was watching, he was like, holy shit. He looked over to the dude, and the dude was watching. He was pissed, and he was like, "That's fucked up, man." Like he thought that this chick, that altar basically thought this chick was gonna have to be raped, and because he's an evil fuck, but she didn't. She willfully did it. He just looked over. He was as surprised as everybody else on the ship, and after they finished, she got up and grabbed her clothes and went to go leave. And his best friend sat there and like looked at him and was like, I didn't want to do it, man. I was ordered to. And he was just lying through his teeth, basically. And the guy lunged at him and punched him in the face and then stormed off the deck of the ship. And, their relationship ended. But that's one situation that occurred over time.
Yeah, that's some dark shit. So has Pindar been the most difficult to reintegrate?
I haven't even tried.
Right.
Like he takes over. I have altars that take over, dude. I black out in the here and now.
Yeah. So are you still serving?
Yeah, I have many altars that are still serving. Yeah, John's service, I think, ended in 2022 in Solar Warden, and he only did 120-year and back, and that's it. Pindar, he's no longer in Nacht Waffen. He's here on Earth, and he basically oversees these bloodline families and sits on this black crystalline throne, like I've already explained.
Yeah.
And, not that I feel important. I think it's fucked up. He's definitely not the best candidate for this planet. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
He's the best candidate for them because these people are fucked up, but he is not good for us. I'll just put it that way. But that's where he is now. But at one point, I remember I had, we had this situation occur where we had to save this German colony that the Guardians have destroyed this planet. They're known as the Guardians, and they basically are the Gestapo, the military arm of the council that oversees the laws in this sector and other sectors. And, over commando basically said, fuck you, and they blew up the planet. So we were going back in time over and over and over and over again and trying to save these individuals on this colony. And I have memory recall of that already. And Penny's talked about it and stuff, just like she talked about blowing my head up,
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah. And, that was intense having recall of that, because I have recall and the psychic feeling of having my head blown up. So that was pretty intense, but, that was earlier. And then after that had taken place, I ended up in front of this council of really advanced species that could just walk in your mind with simple ease. And they asked permission, but I remember being judged, and I've gone over that in other interviews and stuff, but I remember being judged. And when I finally got back on the ship, just briefly gone over just this council. This guy had teleported and just disappeared, so I freaked us both out, and I think we were on the deck of the ship at the time, but we were like, I had looked over and I was like, what the hell? And then like all of a sudden, like a few moments had gone by and both of me and this other guy were shocked and we were just like, what just happened? And then all of a sudden I disappeared and I reappear in this like I said, in this big hall, and there's these really advanced species, these different races of beings, really advanced. There's a guy sitting on this kind of throne looking thing. Pretty sure it wasn't a throne, but he seemed like he was the guy in charge. But there was a bunch of different races, and like they had one person that spoke for them, but there was different a grouping of them, and they all each were like made up of the same race. In different, there was one group of the same race. There was one spokesperson for each, and there was a different group, same race of their species, and they had their spokesperson. But this one like teleported basically from where he was and then popped in front of me after we had a slew of conversation. And when I first got there, the guy that first got taken, he just disappeared. Like I don't know what they did with this guy. But he had disappeared and he looked scared shitless and he just boom popped out. And I had to explain myself to this one guy, that singular individual, and it wasn't a human. It was some aliens dude. He looked human like but wasn't fully human. Anyways, I started begging for my life because it was like, you did this, this, and this, and this, and like listed off a shit ton of crimes that I committed. And they had asked, well, why'd you do it? And I said, I did it for my people. And I at first I thought, don't I get a trial? They were like, what do you need a trial for? You did what you did. We already know what you did. And I think they kind of were like, okay, they kind of played along with it. Well, who are you going to bring to speak on your behalf? And I just remember first I brought in a guy that was there that didn't get taken, that wasn't with me. He popped in, like they literally teleported him in. And he just was, it was like blink, just boom, boom, and he was there. And I was like, hey, da 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 da. And he was stunned looking around, just like I was when I first showed up. And he was like, what's going on here? He called me Pindar, and I was like, I need you to speak on my behalf. And he was like, what am I going to speak on? And all of a sudden they basically felt it was a waste of time. So they sent him back. And then they were like, well, do you have anybody else that would actually speak on your behalf? And there was a Draco that was previously on the ship that I had kicked off. And they were the ones, he was the one who was ordering me, like had ordered us to go and collect this Draco tax, because it was dealing with blowing up these planets, and a bunch of other like crimes that we committed. They were like beyond war crimes, because each planet is a sentient being in and of itself, and we that alter not only destroyed the planet, he killed all the life on the surface on it as well. So this Draco, when he came in, he's like, well, I never ordered you to blow up any of these planets or do any of that stuff. And I was like, yeah, you did. You ordered us to deal with it, to kill them or get the tax, And this Draco basically was like, we never told you to blow up the planets, and I was like, I was stunned. I was like, you fucking bastard, like the way they got around. Yeah, the way he got around, whatever laws were in place, he knew. And then he basically was like, I'm done here. And they were like, no, you're not. And he was like, yes, I am. And he's like, unless you want a galactic, basically threaten, like a galactic war in a sense. Yeah. And they were like, they knew that he was a nobody basically in the empire in itself. So he basically turned into a puddle of flesh right in front of me. And this was like a warrior class Draco. And I was just like, he was like an alpha or warrior class, something like that. And I was just like, whoa,
Do you know
you
what
know,
class of beings they were? Like what species?
they were, I don't know, they were just really powerful, man. Like, I've never seen anything like that before. They were extremely powerful. And they just melted him into a puddle of muck, of fleshy muck, just for him talking out of line. And I was just like stunned. A diplomatic incident. That's what he said. He said, you don't want to cause a diplomatic incident.
Right. Which was clearly a
That was, yeah, and that basically they perceived it as, number one, you're nobody, and number two, you want to threaten us. Okay, we'll show you what we can do. You know, and I don't know who these beings were, but they were really powerful, and I wouldn't fuck with them. I'll just put it that way. At that
what they
point,
look like.
the it's hard to describe them, but there was one that was yellow and it had a bulb shaped head, but it was, you know, that one was the reason why I remember him so well, this being, I don't know if it was a man or a woman, but because it teleported in front of me because I started altering out and with massive different altars out of fear because they were going to end my soul. They were like, we're going to kill you completely. You will be wiped out of existence completely. And I started freaking out at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember shifting altars over and over and over and over, trying to find somebody, something that would speak on my behalf and say that I at least was worth being allowed to exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought of, this one that I served on, which was, I thought at the time was the Ashtar was Commander Ashtar. It's a different being. I've come to realize that at this point, but it portrays itself as if it's that. And
right.
Yeah, I'm still not 100% sure on who it is yet. I'm still diving into it, but this being was like stunned to be where he was, and was like just shocked and looked around and was like, what am I doing here? And I was like, I had gone into myself basically. And I was like, Commander, I need your help, man. I need you to speak on my behalf. And he went down and like he said a few things, and then I guess they just took the information telepathically. Because when I said Commander Ashtar, they didn't even know who I was talking about.
Right.
Who's that? And then that being popped in, like teleported from one area to me, and then went and was like, man, can I go through your mind? Ask permission. And I said yes, and he went into my mind and pulled out the information and smiled, and then teleported that being there. And he basically gave information and stated that I went to do good, like I was doing something clearly good, because they were like, they decided not to exterminate me basically as a soul. And basically my punishment was to basically go to this planet where there's one scenery and that's it. You can't sleep. Like basically you're technically supposed to be awake the whole time. And if the process works, all you do is you just lose your mind trying to figure out what you could have done better, not to be there. And I just remember the first time, like when he hugged me before I went, he was like, just stay calm, and explained the process of how to get out of it. So when I was there, I started listening to what he said, his advice. I took it. I kind of talked myself down and basically talked myself into a sleep in a sense. And then I just closed my eyes, and when I came to, a shit ton of time had already passed, but it felt like nothing to me, like seconds. Well, this being like teleported in, he looked humanoid and was like, have you learned your lesson? And I was like, basically told him no. I was like, he was like, have you learned your lesson? And I was like, no. And I was like, this was easy. And he was like, oh, so you want to do it again? And I was like, sure. And he did it again, and I did the same process, and he came back the second time, and he's like, so have you learned anything? And I was like, yeah, it still was easy. You want to keep doing this? I can do this all day, and I just was smarting off, and he was like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna leave you here permanently." And when he said that, man, I lost my shit,
Hmm.
and I couldn't keep my sanity at that point. And he left, and I basically was looking at the scenery, and it felt like I don't know how long, man, forever. And I just remember going through and just remembering different points in my life where I could have done something different. And then like, what if I did something different from what I already did? What if I did this differently in this situation again and again and again and again and again and again throughout my life? Even up into these programs and everything, just
Hmm.
trying to recalibrate what ifs, which drove me insane
Yeah.
almost,
Which was,
and he showed back up, and he's like, "Have you learned your lesson?" I said, "Yes." And he was like, "Oh," basically was like, "Oh, you're going to drop the attitude. Okay. Clearly you've learned something." And I got sent back
I suppose you got
aboard
no
the
idea
ship.
how long you was in that third time. You got no idea how long that was for.
I don't know. I just know it could have been a million years.
Hmm.
It was seconds, but it could have been a million years,
Yeah.
just trapped in thought. I just remember, and oh my God, it hurts my head thinking about it. But it's just everything in my life. I reevaluated it all. And after I came back, the other guy, he disappeared. And then I was like, oh, and then I disappeared again, back into the place. And I was like, oh shit, And he's like, hey, you got to help me, man. You got to help me. And I was like, because right before he disappeared, I was like, we need to stop doing what we're doing. And he was like, no, we're going to do what we're supposed to. This is an order. I was like, yeah, fuck you. I basically told him, fuck you. I'm not doing it.
Hmm.
And right before he could try to do anything, that's when he disappeared. And then I ended up seeing him again. I ended up teleported back to the place, and he was like, "You got to help me, man." And I was like, I warned you. I warned you to stop. Fuck you." Like, and they just basically, he was like, they just sent me back, and I didn't remember seeing him again. I just remember going back to the ship. I went over to my navigator, um, and basically ordered her to take me and all the ships, because at that point when they had questioned me, I had said I'm doing it for my people, and they
Hmm.
had said, like, in the process before all that started unfolding, they said, well, if you're doing it for your people, then why are you still enslaving people on Earth? you know I took that altar, basically, I mean, what little honor he has, he took that as an offense, and he was
Yeah.
like, and I just remember taking that into task when I came back. I was like, I gave him the coordinates to where Earth was, and most of them didn't even know Earth existed, because we're told that it was destroyed. That's what the Germans tell their citizens and tell people that are serving. Very few people that work in Nacht even know that it exists still. Um, but anyways, I just remember I got back to the ship. I gave her the order to leave the destroyer behind, because that's who we had a high command that was there. And I took the rest of the fleet that I was in charge of, which was pretty much a shit ton of them. And we ended up going into the fourth dimension, and ended up popping out back in the third dimension over the planet Earth, and left that one planet behind. And we just sat there, and I basically delivered orders on what the process was. We were going to basically drop ships on the planet and take out key locations on the planet for all government all over the planet. And you know, um, basically, as a last resort, we would drop a nuclear weapon
Hmm.
to distract them. Which would cause devastation on the planet, which would cause disarray, and it would be easier to cut through you know, cut through any leadership and just take over. Well, in the process of that, I had put on the intercom and talked to every single ship in the armada that was with me, and let them know what my plan was and why we were here. And there were people that were shocked, because there was, I could sense them with my mind. I could expand my mind and hear their thoughts.
Hmm.
All just a ton of different different humans, and even some of the Draco. And there were Draco that were over some of the ships that were there. And I just remember all the ships that had Draco on them. There were some Terrans that tried to overthrow their ships and do what I basically I gave everybody the option. And when I did, there were ships that joined me, and they turned against those other ships. And the Draco that were overseeing those ships got control of their ships, and they all basically were like, fuck that, you're going to fall in line. And I just watched, they had the majority of all the ships that were battleships, and they ended up turning around and turning on the ships that weren't. And when that happened, I had one person that was on the ship, and that person dropped a nuclear weapon, and it exploded on the planet, caused mass devastation. And after that had occurred, I ended up getting our ship got boarded. That destroyer showed back up, and our ship got boarded, and we all got taken prisoner. All the officers got taken prisoner, and we were stuck in these cells that we couldn't use our abilities and shit in.
Would you get boarded by Draco?
Huh?
Who did
No,
it get boarded? No,
it
not by
wasn't
Draco.
even Drake. No, it wasn't by Dracos. It was by what's known as ICC. And they basically took us, and they started torturing and questioning us. And I remember just going aboard the ship, and they were like, "Why'd you do what you did?" And I was like, I was like, "To free Earth." And they were like, "What?" They didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
But, you know, we were all in lockup. And when that happened, there was this being that showed up, and it freed Penny and freed a few other people that were there. And it opened my cage. When I walked by, it looked at me, and it said a different name. Like, I felt like I recognized it, but I can't even remember it. But it was some name of something that I wasn't, you know. But it was a very powerful being. And it said the same thing to, you know, when it looked over, it said Penny's a different name for Penny, and it said a different name for another person that was on board that ship. And after all that took place, I sat there and I was like, okay, I just stayed behind, you know, because I had already been through all this shit, and I was like, fuck that. And, you know, Penny and a bunch of officers took off and escaped, and I stayed behind. And I just remember being put in on the craft, and they were like, "You're going back." And I didn't understand, you know, and at the time I thought they were just sending me back. But as I've gotten further memories, what they did is they age regressed me. They took me to Antarctica. I knew some of the kids there because they were part of House Shaw, but they didn't remember that. At that point, they had no idea that altar wasn't even surfaced, but my altar Pindar was. And he was like, "Do you know who I am? I'm going to kill all of you. You have no idea who you're messing with." And they were like, "Shut up." You know, there was this scientist there, and they were like, "Shut your mouth, boy." You know, and eventually, like, between the kids that were there that didn't believe what I was saying, they were like, "You know, you're stupid, your name's stupid." You know, I was in a cage by myself. I started searching within, and I came up with the name Jimmy. And when I did that, my alter Pindar receded and Jimmy came out. And when he came out, you know, I was basically trauma twinned to an individual. Our oversouls were intertwined. It wasn't a fun process. I've gone over it, you know. But after all that shit was done, I just remember being sent to this place. And then after that, I remember they put me in, I think they cloned me. Like, I was in a clone at that point, and they sent me to Montauk, to Camp Hero. And I was put in what's known as the Phoenix Project, which is what it was actually called. Not the Montauk Project, but the Phoenix Project. And I got brought in there in 1970, and I was around 8 years old.
But you'd been age regressed.
I was there. Yeah, I'd been age regressed at that point. My altar that was there that was surfaced was Jimmy. Preston wasn't even there. Okay.
Right.
And
Okay.
hold on one second, because I have notes on just different things and names and stuff.
Oh yeah, no worries.
So Preston wasn't there at that point because it was 1970. He didn't show up until 1973. There's a guy that came out saying he was Larry James, Go look up his interviews. He did one by himself and he did one without Bielik. But he was there. I remember him being there. This guy, I remember him having black hair and glasses and a lab coat, and he would put it, he was the one who would put us in the chair. But I remember being brought into the underground base, and I remember Al Bielik, and Al Bielik actually has an altar, and that altar's name is Alan. Okay.
Alan, did you say?
Yeah, that's his altar's name, is Alan. And basically he came into a room, we were lined up, we were told ahead of time, we're looking for certain individuals. If you don't have what we were looking for, the rest of you are going to get fed to they basically said, to the Draco. And I didn't know what the hell the Draco was, but at that point, Jimmy didn't. All he knew is he was going to be fed and killed. So he was like, oh shit. And he was scared. I have memories of it. I have the fear that was inside of him, and he got picked and got taken out of the lineup. But before that happened, I remember like basically you had processing. Okay, so there's these batteries that are there, and all three were used. But I think battery 112 was one of them that I was used in. I think that was the battery number, if I'm correct. And there was these dog cages, and you were brought in, and there was a bunch of different dog cages inside this other cage. And what they would do is you would be dragged out of this. I would remember being dragged out of a van, beaten a few times, and then dragged into this dog cage. I was there for a while. There was a bunch of screaming kids. You know, we all were scared, crying, defecating, bleeding all over the place. You know, urinating, screaming for our parents, screaming for God, whatever religious beliefs different people had. It didn't matter. Nobody came. Nobody came to help. The only people that showed up were the people that dragged us out of the cages. And when they did, I remember being dragged into this room. They put this device over my head, and I just remember feeling like I was disassociated, like the feeling of disassociation that we were trained to have before that. And basically, I just remember it felt like my soul was taken out of my body and then recycled back into my body. That's what it felt like. And it felt like I went through some kind of machine. And it was put back. I was put back, and then all of a sudden they were like, all right, you're done. And then we were taken off to a separate room. I think we were changed into some clothes, some white gowns. I think it was specifically, but we were placed in front of these school desks and told to sit down. And they had they set us in front of this wall, and they had a projector on the wall, and it was playing stuff stating, you know, oh, you know, you were handpicked and you're lucky, and you know, you're going to change the world, and all this like garbage programming. And I remember at some point being taken to the underground base and meeting Alan, which was Al Bielik's and originally he wasn't called Al Bielik. It's called something else, but we didn't know that at the time.
Right.
But we knew him as Alan. And he picked me and a group of kids out. The rest got dragged off screaming, from what I recall. And we basically started getting forced into the chair, you know, the trip chair, as it's known. And as that process was going, they told you, just keep your focus in the center, because if you don't, you're going to get lost, and we're not coming to get you. And we would have to focus on these coordinates and go. And you know, the guy that, like I said, that came out as Larry James, he's not in the original body that he was in. And he explains that. You can go look his interview up. He can go through some of the stuff. Some of his information isn't accurate. A good chunk of it is. Okay. Some of it he is just pulling, like, I don't know if he has implanted memories or what. But anyways, you know, he was ruthless. And he called us guinea pigs just like he did in that interview. That's what we were to them. We were guinea pigs. And I just remember, you know, we'd get put in dog cages. We were beaten. Eventually, Preston showed up. I think it was like 3 years later. Sometime around in 3 years had passed. And I remember going into this music room where they had red wallpaper and gold. And, you know, there was a piano in the room. when you go in to sit down, you would sit down facing the wall. So like the doorway would be on your left-hand side. On your right-hand side, there was a old school record player, and then in front of you, he had like this desk and then like a chair that he had, and he would do stuff where he'd play this music, but he also had a piano as well that was further off, you know, in the corner. And he would play this music, and he thought that I was all altered out, basically, like just basically gay altered and zoned out in a certain mind state. I would assume either one of the mind states, you know. And he thought I was in a trance, and he basically and basically Preston B. Nichols is alters. He does have an altar, and that altar's name is Nicholas. You know, when I first started remembering, I didn't think he had an altar, you know, at all. Just by his presentation and the way he is publicly, you know, and the things he said, you know, he had no mercy for what he did, or whatever his altars did. He just had no mercy. And he didn't even tell the truth. He didn't tell the full truth, and he had implanted memories, and he never really did the real work that he tried to act like he did, you know?
Yeah.
But I remember him, like, I talked about it, you know, he took his dick out, he stuck it in my mouth. I bit it because I wasn't
You
where
weren't
he
fully
thought I
tranced
was.
out. Yeah.
And basically he went to go hit me, and he was like, I'm gonna fucking kill you, you piece of shit, you little bastard. And there was these Dracos that would follow him around, and they stopped him. They were like, you're not gonna kill him. And he was like, what? And they were like, you're not gonna kill him. And normally they never spoke up to him. But at that point they did, and they stopped me from being killed. At that point, I was dragged down to the underground base. I was dragged down to sub level 11. I was put in a cage right next to this other kid. I talked about it in an interview. I stated who he was, and I stated his altar's name already publicly. You can go find it, you know, if you want more in depth on that portion.
I can put that link.
I just remember. Yeah. So you know, I remember like trying to calm him, and I lied to him and said everything was going to be okay. I knew it wasn't. And, you know, he probably did maybe at some level, but he started calming down, and we're talking. And like, I just remember Preston hitting the cage and saying, shut the fuck up, you know, something along those lines. And after that had taken place, I just remember being dragged into this training room, and this was on sublevel 11. And there was you know, Jack Pruitt, which is actually John B. Alexander, which is who he really was. Jack Pruitt is just a code name. Right. That person's conscious memories of it were erased, so he doesn't even remember what he did. But he was the director of the project, of the Phoenix Project. Some people called him Pruny. That was his nickname. But his down the hallway was his office. So you had the training room, and if you walked out of the training room, if you walked into the training room, his door was down the hallway at the end, and it was on the left-hand side. But if you were walking out of the training room, it was on the right-hand side. I remember meeting him, I think, briefly. He wasn't a nice man. We got taken in the training room. The person that was there, that was my trainer. I don't know if he's going to be public about it yet or not. So I'm not going to say his name or his altar's name. Anyways, he was ordered by Preston to basically begin my training, or I'll just call him by his altar's name, Nicholas. Nicholas ordered him to train me, and he proceeded the training. He was, I think, probably in his 20s at that point. My trainer was. Right. And he basically, the first thing he did is he dragged me to the back of the wall where there was a bucket of water, and started drowning me. And at some point, I was so lucid and out of it that he finally realized, okay, now it's time. Dragged me over to the chain link fence. There was just a single chain link fence, just, you know, and they hooked up like what looked like jumper cables to it, and basically they, hold on one second, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Just so you know, dude, this session is going to end in about 9 minutes.
Okay.
So
sure.
anything we don't go through now, we'll get to in the part 2. Because
Yeah,
there is just so
okay.
much to discuss.
Yeah. But so I remember being put on the chain link fence, and Nicholas decided he wanted to take personal firsthand control of this situation, and walked over because of what I did to him and proceeded to electrocute me until I was basically almost unconscious. And then when I fell unconscious, he electrocuted me again to bring me back to consciousness. And they uncuffed the handcuffs, and I was basically dragged by my trainer over to, because the way that the chain, like if you walked through the door and faced left and looked at the left side of the wall, that's where the chain link fence was. And when I was taken off of there, we went straight across. So on the right hand side of the wall, there was this you know, yeah, the lights that hang from the roofs in buildings,
Yeah.
the long white tube of light. It was unplugged, and they basically, he was like, light it up, light it up, light it up, you know, and you'd get punched in the face, and he'd be like, light it up now, you know, and if you didn't, they would restart the process again. So, you know, I remember at some point I lit it up, and it started, like the light came on. I don't know what the hell I did. I'm not sure. But after that, like once they got through that process, then became the process of raping you. And I just remember my trainer raping me under orders by Nicholas while he watched. And he took pleasure in it. It was pretty brutal. And I remember screaming and crying. And my trainer just had no emotions at that point. You know, he was in full swing of the process of the MK Ultra programming, and already had the maze built up in his head, and fighting it off is like, you know, slamming your head against a brick wall, basically.
Damn near impossible.
And, you know, he just followed orders, no mercy. He did what he did. Proceeding day after day after that was PT training, and then physical combat training. I remember wearing, he basically, my trainer, well, Nicholas was wearing a black suit with a white dress shirt, black dress pants, black dress shoes. He had a black tie. And my trainer wore like a sandy t-shirt, black combat boots, and did like, not, I don't think it was like digital camo, but basically it was BDUs. It was I think it was like Navy BDUs, pants, or Army, one or the other. I'm not sure at this point, but yeah, that was the uniform for training and on base for us. And I had one of those uniforms. They were for a small man, but they were still too big for me, and the belt didn't really fit. And I remember jumping through these tires and having to hold the pants up while I was doing it, because they weren't for kids.
Yeah.
And I remember doing push-ups and all sorts of different stuff. And they pushed us as hard as we could for me. And eventually it got to the point where he taught me, I think it was Extrema, you know, or Kali, the Kali fighting style. And, you know, he taught me a rudimentary form of it, just basic training, physical combat training. And I remember after that, they brought in that kid, and I had to break him next. So my trainer would order me to break him, and I did the same process. He didn't break as easily, so we dragged him into the sub-level 8, where the feeding room was, which was next door to the trip chair. And there was Draco in there, and there was bodies, the way the bodies were piled up and stuff. But yeah, so we can go into that, I guess, in the next.
Yeah, we'll save that for part 2, because I have a lot of questions about Montauk personally myself, so we will definitely save that for part 2. What I do want to say is thank you sincerely for your time. I can appreciate this stuff is tremendously difficult to talk about, so I know that everybody on my channel is going to be extremely thankful for you for coming on, and I personally am incredibly thankful, so I sincerely appreciate it, Joseph.
Sure, man. I appreciate it too. And, I hope everybody, just keeps their head up and, just keep talking. If you were a part of these projects, that's the only way we can start fixing things. That's pretty much it. And, if you want to find my stuff, you're going to link most of it pretty much. So
yeah, everything, all your Facebook group and stuff, your YouTube channel, Fractal Weapons, I'll put all of that in the description so people know how to contact you if they need to.
Yeah.
And we'll be back. We'll organize a part 2 very soon, bro.
Alrighty, man. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank
you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care. You too.